Xena Warrior Princess is a show that proves not all spin-offs are necessarily bad or average, and the show proves it in a groundbreaking and cult-building way. With a female action hero on TV, which wasn't that common in the 90s, and her jaw-breaking action moves, Xena Warrior Princess quickly became a pop culture phenomenon. The show is also critically acclaimed, and the loving dynamic of Xena and Gabrielle really stole the hearts of the LGBTQ+ community. The show then grew to be so iconic that it even took over its main show, Hercules, and this was largely possible because of its actors who brought the characters to life. Now, without much delay, let's get into the video. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Xena. So first up, let's see who our main lead is. Xena is a fearsome warlord who was known to be the destroyer of nations, but then she redeemed herself to fight for the greater good. Her life as a warlord began in her late teens when her village was raided by another warlord. So to fight against this cruelty, she formed a band of men with her brothers and the village men and then waged war against them. But unfortunately, one of her brothers was killed in this battle, after which she was banished from her village. This is where her journey as a warlord truly began. After leaving her village, she traveled around the world and fell in love with a man named Boreas. Then they went to numerous countries and pillaged them together, spreading fear of her name. This journey of wreaking havoc kept on going for about a decade and finally came to a halt when she decided to conquer Arcadia. And for this, she needed to kill the mighty Hercules, but he defeated her instead. Afterward, she decided to redeem her past deeds and joined hands with him to fight for good. She then traveled with Gabrielle, whom we will discuss next, and eventually sacrificed herself to complete her redemption. But this is not where her story ends, because she returns back as a ghost and later gets resurrected by Gabrielle.
I didn't.
Gabrielle. The story of any hero would feel like it's missing something crucial if the hero has no loyal friend, sidekick, or love interest. Luckily, Xena found all three of them in a single person, and she was Gabrielle. She was known to be the bard of her village, Potidea, but don't let this title fool you about her strength because she can pull up some fierce moves to kick down her enemies. Therefore, she is more rightly a battling bard. Her long and intimate story with Xena began when she and her sister Lila were kidnapped by the warlord Draco to sell them as slaves, but they were then saved by Xena. After this incident, Gabrielle decided to become a great warrior just like her and began following in her footsteps. Although Xena was initially reluctant about this, they both soon began to form a deep bond, and it later turned into an intimate relationship that was deeply loved by fans all over, especially in the LGBTQ+ community. During her adventures with Xena, she also once became an Amazon princess and gained a staff. She then learned to fight with it for the greater good without having to kill. Clearly, she was now growing as a warrior, so of course, she couldn't let herself stay here and rule the Amazon, so she appointed her friend Eany as the queen and continued on her journey with Xena. During this time, she was the queen of 3 separate Amazon tribes, but each time, she passed on the power to a worthy candidate to keep traveling with Xena, and we can see her continuing on with this in the series finale, in which she heads towards Egypt on a ship while Xena is by her side as a spirit.
Are you ready to die, Xena?
Aries. Now, this one is a nefarious character, but he is not purely evil like a typical villain, since his sinister plots mostly included undermining, manipulating, and gaslighting Xena for his own purpose of bringing her back to the side of violence and war. And his intent behind this is pretty understandable since he is the god of war, and also because it was Xena's warlord era that made him fall in love with her. Since then, he has had a love and hate yet passionate relationship with her and has also helped her on various occasions, like when he guided her to the location of the chakram, which then became her signature weapon. He has also protected Xena's daughter Eve from being killed by all the gods, and even gave up his godhood and turned into a human to bring Eve and Gabrielle back to life.
first!
Joxer?
What?
Is that you?
Joxer. The show might be filled with fierce warriors, but even a show about a warrior princess needs a joker, and Joxer is the guy for that. So this hysterical guy who literally sings his own theme song is actually the son of a warlord, and he wants to be a warlord too, but he's not really good at it. Meanwhile, one of his brothers is the king of assassins, while the other brother is a gay singer. Anyway, he travels around with Xena and Gabrielle to become more heroic, and he wishes to be their knight in shining armor. But of course, the two turn him down. Luckily enough, he once got the chance to fall in love with Gabrielle when she got hit by Cupid's arrow, and later with Xena too, although she wasn't really Xena, but only her look-alike. He even ends up marrying her and having 3 kids, one of them being Virgil, whom we will discuss soon in this video, so don't go anywhere. Joxer may not have been the mightiest and the smartest man around, but he was a trustworthy and loyal friend who even gave his life while protecting them, and that is what made him an unforgettable character. And of course, because of the songs too. No one can forget them for sure. Julius Caesar. If you're a history nerd like me, you must know who Caesar was. And yes, he is the same Julius Caesar who was the senator of Rome. But in this show, we particularly know him as a major antagonist to Xena. He first met her when she was still a warlord and captured him during a raid. And on their first meeting, Xena was trying to seduce him for her ulterior motives. But Caesar was also a really smug man, and he tricked her into thinking that he would be waiting for her, but instead, he crucified her when they met again and left her crippled. Since then, they have had a hateful relationship and even waged war against one another. Besides this, he has even once created an alternate reality to kill Xena. He has appeared as a villain on various occasions in the show, and the actor Karl Urban also did a fantastic job in enlivening the evilness of his character, making him one of the best villains. But his character could not stay forever in the show, and just like the historical Caesar, he was killed on the Ides of March.
You want it? Come and get it.
Kalisto. Now this one is a villain driven by revenge, and Xena is the one responsible for it. So when Xena was still a warlord ravaging various countries, she once raided Kalisto's village and her parents died in that raid. Her whole village was also set ablaze, and this left her traumatized as a child and gave birth to her intense hatred and divergence towards violence, pain, and torture, slowly turning her into a sociopath who felt delighted in inflicting pain. Her life has also been pretty eventful because of her sociopathic rage, since she has had several occasions where she could have simply killed Xena and taken her revenge, but she chose to spare her life because such a kill would not make Xena suffer the way she had. But on the contrary, she has died several times at the hands of Xena and has gone from being a mortal to an immortal and then to a goddess, then to an archdemon and finally to an angel, before being born as Xena's daughter Eve. Now that's an impressive character development. She remains one of the most memorable villains of the story owing to her complex character and highly because of her actions and suffering that is quite understandable, even if they can't be justified. Now let's move on to the next character. Boreas. He is a warlord and Xena's partner in crime. Their story begins after she had been crucified by Julius Caesar and ends up in his village. They soon get involved in an affair with each other, even though he was already married to Natasha and even had a son with her. Then one day, Natasha found out about his affair and did what anyone would do in such a situation. She asked him to choose either her or Xena, and Boreas did not hesitate to proclaim his love for Xena and leave his old family to be by her side and go on exciting adventures. The couple then went on to conquer different places like Chin, Siberia, and Greece. But during their last conquest, he died in the Battle of Corinth. Xena was also pregnant during this time and gave birth to their son, Solon, but he never got the chance to meet him. He was a ruthless character who died like a hero, and even though he was flawed, he added a unique flavor to the show and left behind a memorable legacy, making him one of the most recognizable and favorite characters in the show.
Eve. The Amazons I captured, I sold into slavery.
Eve. She is a really interesting character who has been quite the trouble since her birth. So when Xena had found out that she was pregnant, her first reaction was that she hasn't actually met the requirements for it. However, she later finds that it is Kalisto who has put life into her. Then, after time passed and Eve was about to be born, the Fates arrived to make the most terrifying prophecy. They told her that Eve was destined to bring about the death of all the gods. Now, this put her into a grave situation even before she was born, because certainly no god would want that to happen, and they began to hunt her down. This kept on for quite some time, and many gods tried to murder this innocent child. So as a final resort, Xena and Gabrielle decided to fake their deaths while Eve began to live in Rome with the fake identity of Livia. She then grows up to be Rome's brutal warrior and gets engaged with the Roman Emperor Octavius. Now, here's a plot turn that you might find questionable. So, on the one hand, she was engaged, and on the other, she was having an affair with Ares. Yep, the same guy who once loved her mother, but he was not aware of Eve's infidelity. Additionally, he also trained her the way he had trained Xena. Now, moving ahead, Xena returned back to her daughter in Rome after 25 years, but then Eve was on a killing spree with the Romans and had even killed Joxer. Fortunately, Xena was able to reform her and tell her the truth, but then the gods attempted to kill her yet again. Luckily, Xena was blessed with the power to kill the deities in the expected onslaught. Ares also gave up his immortality to save them during this struggle, and afterward, Eve left for Chin to redeem herself. Because of her character, we got to see a great mother-daughter story arc in which several loved characters were lost, but in the end, her character also developed, and just like her mother, she also went on to repent those kills. She was one of the best characters, and perhaps she could have done even more if her character was given more time to grow.
I am so good.
Aphrodite. So here we have the Greek goddess of love and mother of Cupid, who has been pretty spiteful, selfish, and even immature at many times. But she has also undergone great character growth under the influence of others. She was one of the survivors of the Twilight event that was supposed to bring the downfall of gods. When she first got to know that Xena's daughter, Eve, would be responsible for it, she couldn't believe that she would do something so terrible of her own will. So she helped Xena and Gabrielle to sneak to the Olympus, the seat of gods, to tackle this event. But after everything was dealt with, she lost her mental control due to the imbalance created by Ares losing his powers to save others. Her powers were also stolen later, but Xena helped both of them get back their powers and restore the balance of love and war in the world. Aphrodite was a youthful character, and pretty hilarious too. Her character also grew from being a selfish goddess to someone who helped out our leads simply because she loved them, and even made certain selfless sacrifices, which makes her such a lovable and fun character. Now, let's move on to the next. Autolycus. If you thought that only gods and heroes could be major characters, then now is the time to change that thought, because this character is the King of Thieves. A self-proclaimed king, though. Also, do not let this thief title make you think he is one of the bad guys, because in reality, he has a heart of gold. Autolycus has been an orphan since a young age and was raised by his brother, but when they had grown up, his brother was murdered for protesting against a landlord who had thrown him out of his land. Even law enforcement did nothing against it, so he had no option but to take things into his own hands. Since he followed a no-killing policy, he plundered the landlord instead and distributed the loot amongst the poor to avenge his brother. When it comes to skills, he is a master thief, a great escape artist, and a wonderful fighter too. More importantly, he was a good friend to Xena, Gabrielle, and Hercules, and had accompanied them on their adventures. He was also once possessed by Xena after she had been killed by the Romans and was trying to revive herself. He might not have made as many appearances on the show as he did in Hercules, but still, he is a great character who has been a lot of fun, and although he was not seen much physically, he still owned his presence on the show through the memories of Xena. Eany. Remember when we were talking about Gabrielle and how she became an Amazon queen, but then appointed someone else so that she could be with Xena? Well, if you've forgotten, then let me remind you. Eany was that woman. She is the queen of Amazons, and as you would expect from any other Amazonian, she is also highly adept in the use of weapons and is an excellent strategist. She is also the one who gave Gabrielle her first weapon, the bird-headed staff that she had got from her mother as her first weapon too. Although she didn't trust the two warriors at the start, she later grew close to them and became such a great friend and ally to Xena that she even named her son Xena in her honor. She became the "I am always here to help" kind of friend and helped them out in the events of many episodes. Sadly, she was killed by Brutus during a war while protecting Amorous, whom we will discuss soon in the video. Now, the next character is...
The problem is, you also brought back my powers.
Alti. Aries was not the only one who had trained Xena to be a fierce warlord, because the other was this lady. She is a powerful Amazonian shamaness who once used to be her ally and had also trained her in the same powers to make her the destroyer of nations. But she also once cursed her son Solon, and Xena had to get away from her to keep her child safe. Years later, they met once again in Siberia, and she showed Xena a vision in which she killed her. But things took a different turn for Alti, and Xena ended up killing her instead. Even still, she wasn't exactly dead because of her powers, and later would reincarnate herself in others' bodies. One of her reincarnations in 2001 even cloned Xena and Gabrielle for evil, but she was eventually electrocuted to death by them. She was a great villainess whose appearances on the show meant that something torturous and sinister was going to happen. The actress Claire Stansfield also really brought her character to life, making her one of the most loved, or should I say hated, villains.
She's possessed.
Eany. He was a street magician and a preacher, but most importantly, he is a friend and ally of our lead Xena and her dear Gabrielle. Our warriors met him when they had gone to India, and he helped save Gabrielle from the possession of a demon who was posing to be a Devi with mystical powers. But guess who the real Devi was? Yep, it was Eany, but even he was unaware of it until he used his powers to get rid of the demon. Soon, the people began worshipping him as an avatar of God who could heal others. He also accepted his newfound powers and identity, and began preaching the way of love to everyone all over the earth. Things took a serious turn for him when he got told that he might cause the fall of gods, so the only logical thing for him to do was now sacrifice himself to prevent this from happening. Although he wanted to find another way, Aries clearly stated that it was the only way. So despite not truly wanting it, Eany agreed to martyr himself, and then Aries killed him. But this was not the end, and this is also why he is such a crucial character in the show, because even after dying, he indirectly triggered the fall of the gods through his followers called the Elygians. And this event influenced many other events in Xena's and others' lives. Moreover, he returns as an angel, and later lets Eve learn the truth about her mother, as well as stops his friends several times from doing the wrong actions. Alright, let's have a look at our next character on the list. Virgil. Now this character has versatile skills, and he is nothing like his father, Joxer, when it comes to fighting. He is a great writer of epic poems, but he never shared this with his jolly singing dad, thinking that he wouldn't accept it. Well, I think Joxer would have been overjoyed if he got to know this. What do you say? Moreover, he is also a brilliant blacksmith and a great warrior who was deeply inspired by the brave stories of Xena and Gabrielle. Still, he had one thing in common with his father, that he fell for the same woman his father had fallen for, and he even went on to tell Gabrielle about how he felt. They even became close to each other and flirted a lot when they were both consumed by darkness during the opening of Hell's portal in one of the story arcs. He also later accompanied them to more thrilling adventures in Africa and Greece before settling down to farm and write poems. Virgil was much like a foil who brought to light the better qualities of others. He was also like a man candy with his poetic and warrior skills, and even showed his goofy side in one of the episodes where he dressed up as a pirate and pretended to be a slave dealer. But sadly, his character disappeared too soon from the show. Now let's check out the last character in our list. Amorous. She is the one for whose protection Queen Eany had given her life, and she is sometimes considered partly guilty of it too, because that situation had arisen due to her arrogance and defiance of direct orders. Some of you might have guessed already that she is an Amazonian, but hey, let me tell you otherwise, because she isn't exactly an Amazonian. She had actually lied about being one to become part of the tribe, and often referred to her old tribe to cement her false identity. But she lied about this only because she wanted to feel that she belonged. Just who wouldn't melt for such a character? However, she acted like a brat most of the time and had no sense of authority, which often got her into trouble. But still, she did not remain like this forever, and her character matured with time under the great influence of Xena and Gabrielle. She was a nice addition to the show, and fans would certainly have loved to see her more in action as Gabrielle's companion, but sadly, her character was cut short because the actress was cast in another show, and they also did her character dirty by not giving her a proper end and simply killing her off-screen. Marvelous verdict. With such great characters, this show can easily steal anyone's heart, regardless of whether they're new fans or have been watching it since the release. I hope you enjoyed the video, and in case you're still hungry for some more Xena content, then you should totally check out our other videos on the show. And let us know in the comments which characters you would like us to explore in more depth. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe.